Hi guys! Welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. My name is Nduku Kiteng'e, not Wakeji Kamore, and I'll be taking you through the book of Ruth. We started off yesterday with chapter 1, where we saw the main characters as Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, and Naomi's husband Elimelech, and their sons Mahlon and Chilion. So now we're getting into the character that all women who have interacted with any Bible or social media know about, and that's Boaz. He features in this chapter and through the rest of the book. And so why don't we kickstart the session? So we'll start with reading through chapter 2, then we'll go through what reflections I've had from that, and then share a few takeaways and a question for you to think about. Yeah? Awesome. So let's start. So I'll be reading from the NLT version. This is Ruth chapter 2. Now there was a wealthy and influential man in Bethlehem named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband Elimelech. One day, Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who's kind enough to let me do it." I'll pause here. Remember, at the end of chapter 1, they arrived just at the start of the barley harvest. Okay, back to verse 2. Naomi replied, "All right, my daughter, go ahead." So Ruth went out to gather grain behind the harvesters. As it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked, Then Boaz asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She's the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes rest in the shelter." Boaz went over and said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when you gather grain. Don't go to any other fields. Stay right behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly, and when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well." Ooh. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "What have I done to deserve such kindness?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner." "Yes, I know," Boaz replied, "but I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done." "I hope I continue to please you, sir," she replied. "You have comforted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I am not one of your workers." At mealtime, Boaz called to her, "Come over here and help yourself to some food. You can dip your bread in the sour wine." So she sat with his harvesters, and Boaz gave her some roasted grain to eat. She ate all she wanted and still had some left over. When Ruth went back to work again, Boaz ordered his young men, "Let her gather grain right among the sheaves without stopping her, and pull out some heads of barley from the bundles and drop them on purpose for her. Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time." So Ruth gathered barley there all day, and when she beat out the grain that evening, it filled an entire basket. She carried it back into town and showed it to her mother-in-law. Ruth also gave her the roasted grain that was left over from her meal. "Where did you gather all this grain today?" Naomi asked. "Where did you work? May the Lord bless the one who helped you." So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man in whose field she had worked. She said, "The man I worked with today is named Boaz." "May the Lord bless him," Naomi told her daughter-in-law. "He is showing his kindness to us as well as to your dead husband. That man is one of our closest relatives, one of our family redeemers." Then Ruth said, "What's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the entire harvest is completed." "Good," Naomi exclaimed. "Do as he said, my daughter. Stay with his young women right through the whole harvest. You might be harassed in other fields, but you will be safe with him. So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's fields and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she continued working with them through the wheat harvest in early summer, and all the while she lived with her mother-in-law. Wow. I don't know about you, but I'm just like, what is this person? Um, it's even taken my train of thought away. So back to this story. We see Boaz enter the picture, and we see Ruth actually doing something which was very interesting and natural. She wanted to work, and she did such a good job and was so respectful in her work that it spoke for her. The things that I noticed is that when Boaz came in, he did see Ruth. Probably she was a pretty girl, or maybe she was out of place, because you notice that he says, hang out with the younger girls. So it was not the tradition for older women to be doing harvest. And probably that's why she was at the back after the harvesters, because they needed people who are strong, who are able to do work quickly so that they can get the harvest out quickly. And so she followed them to be able to pick up whatever they dropped off. And so he must have wondered, who is this girl following up here? The thing that I love about this chapter is that normally we are told to sell ourselves, but Ruth didn't speak one word. The foreman spoke for her, and the villagers spoke for her. They spoke for her character. You see, when the foreman says she's a young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi, and when Ruth asks him, what have I done to deserve this favor? In verse 11, Boaz says, I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother in your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. God presented Ruth to Boaz even before he met her. Because he was a family member, he knew Elimelech. Of course, news of Elimelech's passing and Mahlon and Chilion reached him. And the story of Naomi coming back with this woman, because the women were like, oh, Naomi is back. So the community saw her. The community saw what she had done. And the community heard what she had done. And they shared that with Boaz. And this really challenged me, that a man would have had good things about you. And when you're thinking about life, not even just in the context of relationship, but even in the context of work, it's very easy to think that we have to be out there shouting at the rooftop how we are the most amazing workers, how we do the best work. But really, that's not what gets us to progress. It's what people around you are saying about you. If you're a good person, it will show in what people say. If you are not so good person, it will show with what people say. And so this challenged me to ask myself, is my work, is my effort, is my character evident to those around me? And then we fast forward, Boaz really treated her kindly. He gave her food, he gave her extra food. He really covered her. The thing that struck me second was when Ruth went to her mother-in-law. She shared with her everything that had happened. And her mother was like, good, that man is a good man. And I really love verse 22 when she says good. When Ruth goes back to her and she's like, he's told me to go back and stay with his harvesters. Naomi says, good, do as he said. My daughter, stay with his young women right through the whole harvest. You might be harassed in other fields, but you'll be safe with him. In the same way, Ruth's character was evident to Boaz because of the community. Boaz's character was evident to Naomi because of community. And I know it's very easy to think of our lives as single lives, but there's something that community brings in for us. The second aspect around this direction from Naomi is that Naomi was willing to hear and to encourage, and Ruth was willing to listen. If Ruth has decided, oh no, let me try other fields, maybe they have a better quality barley than this, then possibly we wouldn't be going where we are going with the next chapters. So it's something that struck me is that Ruth was also willing to hear. She was willing to hear Boaz, and she was willing to hear Naomi, so that they could get a bountiful harvest that they could live on. As we end the second chapter, I'd like for you to think about this question. What about my character would I want others to speak about in the spaces where I'm not? Think about it. If you like this chapter and you'd like to go on with us through chapter 3, please like, subscribe, comment. If you think this was interesting and you'd like to share it with someone, share it. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you have any questions as well, put them down there. Thank you and have a good day.